Hello! We are here tonight to discuss ancient knowledge. And when I say tonight, I mean like way late tonight.
That's right.
Everyone has already gone to bed, so we had to go down to the basement and play in the dungeon. So this is one of our Gen Con pickups, hence Rob put the
That's right.
Gen Con dice bag out there. Yeah. So before we get into discussing it any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell down there, because you don't want to miss out on any of these Gen Con releases.
Or late night videos.
Or late night videos. Yeah, well, those may not be appropriate. We'll talk about those another time. But yeah, make sure you subscribe so you can follow along as we go over our Gen Con videos, not so much the late night ones.
Hey, yeah.
After hours at Legends of Nirvana.
After dark, Legends of Nirvana.
All right. What can you tell us about this?
All right. So Ancient Knowledge, this is a 2023 release, but it's not readily available yet. The overall rank is 9,355, and it's rated 7.9. Plays two to four people, and it says 75 plus minutes. It took us quite a bit longer than that. Ages 12 and up. Designer is Remy Matthew. Art by Adrian Ribes, Emilian Rodeval, I believe. Published by iEllo. Geek Market has it for $120. That's the most expensive, and the only one I found it. The other one I found at Team Board Games, and for pre-order it's $67.50, but no one else has got it up for pre-order yet.
Okay, so let's talk about the quality of the components. So you've got cards, they don't have a linen finish. They're really solid, and there's a lot of them. The first time you break these out, it's a beast to shuffle these things because there's a ton of them, and they're solid. They did not want to give. Now, some of them, I don't know if somebody was writing on something and it was on the cards were underneath, but there's some notching I've seen on a few of the cards. I don't know how that happened, but they're gonna, you don't want to write on top of them. That's for sure.
Okay.
You've got little versions of the cards, same kind of deal. They're very thick, solid. There's not as many of them. There's less problematic to shuffle, except for the fact of their size and their stiffness. So, given that, it's going to be tricky to shuffle any of the decks, but the big one's the worst.
But I would still, if you're going to play this a lot, I would still sleeve it.
Probably, yeah. And I definitely will be playing this a lot. We'll get into that more. We have little cardboard knowledge tokens that are in two varieties, one representing ones and one representing fives. Mm-hmm. You have a board. It's again slick finished, but each board has custom art on it. So they have, if you want to call them player colors, they're kind of a purplish tint on that one, red on that one. There's a bluish and a greenish one, but they're all set in a different civilization type.
Civilization. Like mine's more Babylonian.
This is Egyptian.
That's more Egyptian. And yours is like more Greek, wasn't it?
No, it was Easter Island. It looked like because they were making heads in stone. So, and then, that's basically all you get. And then there's a little score pad.
And then you get a whatever creature that is.
It looks like some kind of hieroglyph.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a penguin with a very long beak.
Yeah, it actually looks a lot like with the stuffed animal of the plague doctor that I got for Sarah.
Yeah, kind of.
It looks like a kind of a penguin / plague doctor. So, as far as component quality, there's nothing outstanding about it. I'll probably give the quality a 5.5 just because I think the cards are a good stock.
Yeah.
And, that's about it. The board functions really well, but, it's just a piece of cardboard.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good score. I think that maybe if they had a player mat, that would have been kind of upped it a little bit.
Yeah, this mat does not come with it. This is for a totally different game, but it worked nicely for the size of what we needed. I will say also the storage in the box is designed to fit everything. I don't know if sleeved cards will fit as well. We haven't tried that, but everything's custom molded to fit the pieces that are in the game, so that's kind of nice as long as it does fit sleeved cards.
Right.
So moving on to themes. So this is all about civilizations, generic civilizations. You're building artifacts that you want to ultimately roll off to score points off of your board as time passes, but you don't want to lose the knowledge that you gain from each building you build, because that counts against you. So you want to preserve the knowledge tokens. And when I say preserve, you're actually throwing the tokens away, but you're stopping them from rolling off the board. Because if they do, then they stay on your board as lost knowledge, which is not good. Yeah, you don't want to forget things. That's
right.
for sure.
That's for sure.
As far as the theme goes, I think the art on the board is beautiful.
Yeah, the art on the cards are great too.
Yeah.
So I mean, overall, the art is very, very nice quality, even on the small cards. And I haven't seen a whole lot of like repetition either.
So that thing's a Thoth.
Oh, well, of course it's a Thoth.
They actually have a card for that poor guy.
Man,
so he's a Thoth.
We should have totally thought of that. No, well.
Yeah.
But I think that the art is really good. And like I said, very little repetition, if any at all.
Yeah.
So that obviously a lot of work has went into the artwork for this game. So
yeah.
I think thematically, when we look at just the art, it gets high praise from me for that.
And I will say the gameplay makes sense with it because you're aging these artifacts across time.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how on the board, even the iconography, you can see kind of a building in pristine case, and then it keeps getting worse and falling apart as you go across. And I thought that was really cool. So the iconography is super easy in this game. Mm-hmm. Everything makes sense. And, we'll get to rules. We'll talk about the cheat sheets, but they work very well with this game. I think, thematically, because it does integrate so well and the art is just flat out gorgeous, I'm probably going to give this a 7.5.
I agree. I think it's 7.5, 8, somewhere around there. I really do like the artwork, so I agree. It's a good solid score.
All right. So moving on to the rule book. So the rule book, it's like the game itself isn't that big as far as
it's a pretty small box. Really.
And the rule book is 16 pages in length. Has a cover on it, but it's almost a black and white. But there's a little subtle color in the birds on it. But then you get into the book. The big problem, then the contents are really nice, and it's showing you everything clearly, what's in it, and how it tells you kind of how many each one is, very easily to see. Shows you the arrangement of how you place your player board. That's nice, but there's a lot of typos. There are a lot of them in the book.
Like bad grammar, or
well, I think some of them are mistranslations. But there's a lot of words left out, articles left out. The biggest problem one was actually one that caused some confusion because I had to read it a few times because it was talking about the fact that you basically you can play 2 of your artifacts onto this, not artifacts, but monuments onto the same location.
Right.
But it says if it's an unoccupied location, well, it meant occupied.
Okay.
But the way using unoccupied really throws a totally different meaning to the whole thing. So there's a lot of that in this book.
That's too bad.
Because everything else is it's laid out wonderfully. It goes through each of the steps, and it's not like it's that hard to deduce what they meant when you see these typos. You can just kind of say, "Oh yeah," I can move on. But that one threw me for a minute. So given that, I'm going to probably give this, I think it's still a really simple read. And, this game, originally when I saw it, it was labeled as a iEllo expert, which we know Cora was a iEllo expert. Yeah. And that game was not that complex to learn, but it was still, there was a lot of depth strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth to
this feels like that kind of same level. I'll say the rulebook does an outstanding job for 16 pages to teach you all of it. And it's got nice iconography showing you all the icons, and they're just their text name of what they are. But you really won't need it because what really isn't great are these cheat cards.
Yes, they're perfect.
The cheat card does exactly what you need to do. It tells you on one side the turn overview. It shows you each step of your turn. And on the other side, it has all the actions you can choose. You can do 2 actions per turn. It says any 2, but you can use the same one twice.
Yep.
So everything's clearly delineated on there. It's simple to teach this game because you don't need to know that much. The only thing you have to know is like the starting setup, who gets what. It's
and just
simple.
Making sure you follow that turn order is very important.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and give this, even though there's the typos, I'm going to give it an 8. I think it does a good job on so many things, and this is just outstanding.
Yeah, and I never read anything, but Randy taught it. Is super quick.
Yeah. So, all right. So moving on to the gameplay. So this board has basically 2 sections to it. We have 3 if you count this part that's off the board.
Yeah.
But basically you have a timeline at the top that runs from 1 to 6, and then you have a section on your board that holds artifacts, which are the purple cards, and it'll hold 5 of them. So on your turn, as I mentioned, you've got 4 phases. The first is the action phase, and this is the main part of your turn. You're going to take 2 actions from the other side of the card of your choice, which we'll go through in a moment. Then you're going to go through the timeline phase. The timeline phase is basically any cards you have that have like a hammer icon on them.
Right.
They will trigger during this phase as long as they're in your timeline.
Yeah. And by icon, he's talking about we got it in the, not really in the corner, but you can see it to the right of the banner. And so there'll be a hammer icon that he's mentioning. So that's what he's referring to.
So if it's in your timeline or if it's on an artifact card, because the artifact cards will stay in play for the whole game pretty much. There's cards that let you alter the rules in the game, but for the most part, when you play an artifact, it's permanently in play. And once you've played 5, you're done. You can't play any more artifacts because you cannot remove them and you can't replace them. So then you have the decline phase, which is basically aging everything one stop on the board.
Just the monuments.
Yeah, all the monuments.
Yeah, your artifacts, like Randy said, don't age, they stay.
Yeah. And if they get to the first position and they age, they move off. And at that point, there's another icon that looks like the symbol that's on that space, but it looks like basically the columns toppling.
Right.
At that point, those actions trigger for the cards that rolled off. Not any of them that are on your timetable still. So any hammers that have rolled off will no longer trigger. So there's different symbols that are going to trigger at different times, just like most games have. Sure. This one has just a few other symbols because you have ongoing effects with like the infinity symbol, which is typical. You have a lightning bolt, which is immediate effects when you put the card into play. And then you have the ones that have a star symbol, which are end of game scoring. Right. But other than that, you have the hammers, which trigger in your timeline, and the ones that trigger when they roll off. But that's basically all there is to each turn. Now, as far as the actions you can choose, you can create. Now, there's 4 types of suits, if you will, for cards. 3 of which are monuments, and they just have different styles of cards that are in those colors.
Of, like the matte theme to that color. So
like the brown cards are typically higher scoring, but you have the risk reward because if you put them in play, each card has icons on it that represent knowledge tokens and how many victory points there are. So when you put it in play, it'll have a number to tell you which slot of your timetable it starts at. So for example, this card here says it starts in position 6. So when I put it into play, I put it in position 6. Now some of them will have a lock, like this one does, where I cannot do anything about it. It starts at 6 and I cannot alter that. But other ones will have, like this one here starts in position 3. It does not have a lock. So I can put this one in 3 and I can discard cards to move it further along if I want to age it faster. So in some cases, you do want cards to roll off faster because that's where you score points at the end when they roll off.
Or you might get some kind of special bonus that will combo well with other cards you have in play.
But then some of them, you want them to stay in play, like the hammer ones, because you want them to trigger and be able to take advantage of that special ability. So there's a lot of strategy in how you decide to place your cards in this game.
There's even other cards that will allow you to move them back further in time, I guess you could say. And so, like I said, there's a lot of strategy to it.
Yeah. So the ones that the tokens that go on it, like this one has 3 tokens. It goes in the 3rd position. So I would take 3 of these knowledge tokens and I would play them on the card. Now, those are negative victory points if they fall off at the end. So I need to figure out ways to get rid of them. One way is there's an action called Archive. And if on the Archive action, if I choose to take that action, I could discard a card for each token that I want to remove. It's one action to pay as many cards as I want to discard these tokens.
So you could discard 3 cards to get rid of all 3 tokens.
Right. Now, the card hand size is limited strictly to 10. You cannot go over 10. Right. So if you get an opportunity to draw cards and you have 10 already, you just don't draw. You don't draw more and then discard down. You stop at 10.
Right.
So you've got a very limited amount of cards you can store for discarding things for these things.
And it's another part of that strategy because I had a lot of cards that was allowing me to draw, but I wanted to wait to play them because I had 8, 9 cards in my hand, and I didn't want to waste that.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have cards in your hand that, this one will go really well if I get this other card in play first, and I have to get that one to age all the way down before it'll make this one of value. So there's a lot of times you want to hold off on playing those. So another thing you can do is learn. So there's 3 kind of obelisks in play at the start of the game. 2 at level 1 and 1 at level 2. And the level 2 ones are all in-game victory points for the most part. I think all of them are.
I think so too.
They all have boxes on them that have prerequisites that you have to meet in order to take that card. But if you meet the prerequisite, you just take the card and put it into play.
And that's one of your actions.
And that is your ability. You get the ability on it. So, like I said, level 2s are all pretty much scoring. Level 1s give you an immediate benefit when you put them into play. So sometimes it'll be to let you draw more cards. A lot of them are. Some of them will let you remove some of the artifact tokens or the knowledge tokens off of your monuments. Some of them will impact or harm other players. I mean,
that, and some of them, some that affect your timeline.
Yep. So there's a little bit of hodgepodge of everything in the level 1s. So you want to strategically get them. And there's also victory points that vary based on set collections throughout the game of those item cards, or even some of the times it's of these different suits of cards.
Yeah, you had a set collection for the knowledge.
Yeah.
And I had a set collection for the monuments.
Yeah. So, you want to try to get the ones that are going to score you the most points at the end of the game. So the other actions you can take is excavate. So as cards roll off, you're going to run into situations, particularly early in the game, where you're short on cards. So there's 2 ways to get cards, which are your main ways. One is to search. Search is
one of your actions.
One of the actions. You're probably not going to do it a whole lot once you get your game going, but early in the game you might. And that's just to draw a card off the top of the deck. But it takes an action to do it, so it's not a very efficient way to get cards.
Right.
The other way is excavate. So as I roll things off into my past, they call it the past, as things move off the board, any of those cards become cards that I can use not only for the scoring potential of those cards, or from the ongoing effects. They stay in effect even when they're retired, but I can also use the excavate action to tap it, turn it to its side, and for every one I do, I get 2 cards. So it's twice as good as doing this. Not to mention, I can do one action. I can turn as many cards as I have
just one action.
With one action.
And maybe draw a really great card to do for your second action.
Right. But again, you're limited to 10 cards, so you're probably not going to want to do a bunch of cards. Although there are cards that also trigger based upon how many of those you turn.
And there's cards that allow you to turn them back and use them again.
Because normally you can only turn them and they stay turned and you can't use them again. But there are cards that let you reset some of those.
Right.
They're very rare.
But they're there. I had a couple. I just never needed them.
Yeah. So, you find as you get to playing, there's lots of ways to get cards in this game that are much more advantageous than just drawing one at a time.
Sure.
But early in the game, you're probably not going to have a lot of those options. So, this game builds up to, as the game goes, you become much more powerful in your plays.
Yeah.
But early in the game, you're going to find it's a little slow building up. Now, once somebody gets 14 of these cards into their past, that triggers the end of the game. You finish that round around the table, and whoever's the first player is going to have this little cute Thoth, as we found out it's called, in front of them. And you'll play until the last player goes, and then everybody tallies their scores based upon the number of stars they have on their cards, the number of victory points they get from bonuses from the cards that had a star icon. And then all your level 2 items are worth however many victory points they say on them.
Right.
And then you'll subtract off any of the victory points for the tokens that you've accumulated, lost knowledge. And then you also get 1 victory point for every non-complete monument in your timeline. And that's your score. It's that simple. So while I say it's that simple, there's a lot of depth to this game.
There really is.
This is a game you're going to play over and over, exploring the different combos. Now, the base game comes with starter sets that you play until you get the feel for how to play the game. it recommends in the rules, the standard way would be to draw 10 cards from the deck and keep 6 of them. I honestly think this would be better as a drafting start.
I do too. I think that would be a lot more fun.
Because there is a lot of luck involved in what cards you get. That's the only complaint that I would have about this game is you could very well get a deck of starter cards that is going to give you an advantage over somebody else.
I think my starter cards were pretty powerful.
Yours were powerful. And I played with the one Heather had last time, and I had a lot more difficulty getting rid of those knowledge tokens. You and I had the ones that Miranda and her mom had, and they had an easy way of getting rid of tokens.
Yeah.
In this game, Heather managed to find cards that got rid of them, so we all ended up with I think Heather had 1.
Yeah, she only had 1, and we had 0.
Right.
But I mean, I never got a single knowledge token off.
Right.
Over here to where I even had to remotely worry about how am I going to get rid of these lost knowledge now.
Yeah.
I had combos going on that I could remove up to 6 to upwards of 14 at a turn.
Yeah.
And so I had nothing to worry about.
I think the starters are really there to guide you on how to build your first, because they all combo, all the cards in your starter set combo really well.
Right.
And it's kind of an obvious combo. So, you'll be able to see, it's trying to get me to lead me into doing this.
Yeah, and the luck part was, since I got all these cards that helped me get rid of those knowledge tokens, I luckily got a lot of those brown cards that had a lot of high scoring and a lot of tablets, but I was able to get rid of those knowledge tokens. I was able to score quite a few points off of that.
Right. So I think this, honestly, I think I would prefer drafting the starting cards.
Too.
Just doing a blind draw of 10 off the top, I think you could still have some impact of the luck of this. But drafting, I think you can build it the way you want it to be. So this might be one I house rule, even though I hate house ruling, just because I think...
Or at least we could try it and see if it makes a difference.
Yeah, because I think that takes the luck element of the starting out, which is the only complaint I have about this game. I love the mechanics in this game.
Yes.
I love multi-use card games. This definitely is that. You're getting, and I like the fact that it's got 2 sets of cards you can choose to play from, and there's lots of ways to score in it. The cards themselves give you a lot of scoring up, and you'll find sometimes it's more advantageous to get a 0-point card in play because the action is going to help you so well. Powerful. I will say there are a few cards that I think are very rarely something I would want to use, especially there was like a pack of little Gen Con promo cards they gave me. There's one in there that it's 0 points, but it lets you remove a card from your tableau from your timeline.
And that could be a big deal because some of those red cards had 14 knowledge tokens. Yeah. And if you didn't have a good combo of removing those, that would be a lot of negative points.
But in most cases, you wouldn't have put them into play to begin with.
That's true. But there are some, we haven't seen a whole lot, but there is at least one card that I found that has an element of screw your neighbor.
There are several.
And so I was able to make people discard. You were able to do it one time as well.
Yeah, and then I had some that let me add tokens to other people's cards.
Yeah.
And, I think Heather played one where she added a token.
She added one to yours.
I think
she added one to mine too.
Both of us, yeah. But, that's the thing. It doesn't target one. It targets everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's better.
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like when you pick on one person. Now, the one, I think I did have one that targeted one person where you could put 3 tokens on one person's, card of your choice. You couldn't do it to everybody. But for the most part, the attack cards are universal, everybody. So, I like the mechanics of how it works. I like the engine that you can build with this. This is exactly the kind of game I enjoy. I was I'd already had high hopes for this one whenever I saw it because I knew it was iEllo's expert series, but it doesn't have the expert on the logo when I picked it up, which made me a little nervous. But it definitely belongs side by side with Cora.
Yeah, I agree.
I was very happy with this purchase. I think I'm probably a 9 on this one. I think I like this one slightly better than Wild Wild West, which was my one to beat from Gen Con so far. So far I can say honestly, of all the games we've played, I don't think we've had a stinker so far from Gen Con.
I agree.
All of them have been good games, solid games that we've played. So what are your thoughts?
Um, I could do a 9. I really do enjoy the game. I like it a lot. Not a whole lot I can really complain about. I mean, there is a little bit of luck. Even I think even if you did the drafting, it's a card game.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be luck. And I think that if you get the right artifacts initially, you could potentially run the game if you get the right cards early in the game.
Right. Which
it would be very difficult to get caught up. But I think that would be hard to do, and it would be harder to do with that drafting if you were to incorporate it.
Right.
But, at the same time, I don't know, because then it might make it might break the game a little bit if you do the drafting. I don't know. So I think it'd be fun to try it one way or the other. But even with that luck mechanic in there, I think there's still lots of ways to mitigate it, because you can discard cards to get rid of tokens. You can discard cards to be able to speed the cards up to try and be able to draw more cards in the future. There are some ways to mitigate it. So it's not punishing. Yeah. Which is when I don't like it, is when that luck is punishing. So, but it's not in this game. So I think 9 is a good score.
All right. Well, that's our thoughts on Ancient Knowledge. I don't know if you've had a chance to play this, but if you have, let us know what your thoughts are. I mean, it's definitely one to keep an eye out on once it actually does get more prevalent out there.
Yeah, I passed on it because it looked interesting. I just didn't think it'd be that good.
Yeah.
And I'm pleasantly surprised by it.
Well, other than the fact that you don't have a copy of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I could have got it, but I chose to pass it because when I was there, they had copies still available.
They still did have it.
Yeah, but I just thought it looked okay. And I didn't nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, I mean, this is not one of the hot sellers.
Yeah, it didn't really jump out at me either. So I was like, I'll just play Randy's copy and maybe get it later. Yeah. Well, I kind of regret that now. I wish I would have had a copy.
But yeah, it's definitely not one that sold out. That at least not until the very end.
Maybe the very end of it.
But yeah, I mean, they were definitely readily available. They had a nice pyramid of them in there every time we went by. But I think this is one of those hidden gems people didn't.
I just think overall, I mean, this is by iEllo, but iEllo is part of the Flat River Group, and they just really kind of knocked it out.
I would say I could have spent so much more money at that booth.
Just that group in general just really had some good games.
Yeah,
and so that's pretty cool. Pretty cool that they did that.
Well, given the fact that Asmodee had such a small presence,
that's true.
They basically were the Asmodee there. I mean,
they really were
not Asmodee, but they were the
it's kind of the same idea.
Of companies.
You have several different groups, companies there under the Flat River Group, and I picked up Encyclopedia. That wasn't a Gen Con release, but that was, I think, last year.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited for that. They had the new expansion of the museum there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they had some really good stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I think I ended up walking away with 4 or 5 titles from there. Yeah. And, it's like, stop me, because I could probably have bought 4 or 5 more and been happy with them.
Right.
So, that was definitely the booth I spent the most time at Gen Con. So, all right, well, hopefully you got a chance to play it. If not, keep this on your radar.
Yep.
This is definitely one that I think if you enjoy engine builders, if you enjoy multi-use card games, this is one you definitely want to check out.
For sure.
All right, so till next time, keep on playing and keep on watching. Bye.
Bye.